value of the National Fund as a network is very significant. In fact, that's one of the most important things about the National Fund.
It's a way to connect with people who are doing great work across the country, people who come from this work from very different perspectives. Sometimes they're running collaboratives like I am, and we can talk really tactically. Other times maybe they're funders who have this broader landscape view and kind of advance the field more broadly.
The National Fund was founded by several national investors who really wanted to break down the silos within the workforce development system. We are investing in local funding collaboratives, which have gone from 3 at the time of the founding of the National Fund to 36 at this time.
It brings together employers who invest in their frontline healthcare workers, and we share best practices and learn from each other, but we're also trying to encourage other employers to get involved in investing in their frontline workers.
By and large, I feel it's important for us not to be the only leader at the table. We feel it's important to join with other folks who are leading this type of work.
Everyone has to come to the table prepared to offer what they have and to listen for what the needs of the others are, and then match those up and work together for the improvement of all. It's not what's in it for me kind of situation, but rather how will this benefit all of us.
We really learned from many of the sites that had started before us how to do this work in a much deeper way, in a way to engage employers, to really lead the efforts.
This notion of having as many brains at the table as possible, right? You can never have too many smart people. You can never have too many connected people.
It's an opportunity for us. We cover the 3 states of Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, but for us, how do we work with national partners, collect ideas, share what we're learning in rural communities as to how to really put people to work and bring employers. For us, it's important for employers to be at the table to hear about some of the innovative approaches that employers in other regions are taking and how they may apply it in their respective organizations.
We're pleased to work with a new initiative in Louisville called Kentucky Manufacturing Career Center. So that collaboration has led to even the sharing of job applications and job requirements, and also just sharing of effective practices and good action.
Without the support of the National Fund, and not just monetary, but actually the data they present, the opportunities they give us like this to spread our wings and get to talk to other people that maybe are not readily available to us at other times, to find out what's new in the industries, in the sectors, who can we network with and learn from. And without that kind of national organization, it's very difficult to make those kind of contacts.
Initially, when we envisioned this, we envisioned it as a network of networks. That is, there were a lot of organizations out there that had tremendous strength. We saw this in our vision of this as a way of achieving a level of connectivity across the field that would really enable significant progress to be made.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hate to interrupt your lunch. Please continue eating. Servers, please continue serving. But we have a lot of awards to give during this lunch period, so we want to make sure we get to them. I hope this morning's workshops were enjoyable and informative. I visited a few of them. It looked like there was a lot of great discussions going on. A few years ago, when I had just started, maybe a couple of years after I'd started as director of the National Fund, I was looking for someone who could come in and be an administrative assistant to me and to the work we were beginning to expand. We had a grant from the Social Innovation Fund, a major grant through Jobs for the Future, who are great partners in that, initiating and implementing that grant. And I was incredibly fortunate to find someone who was a graduate of a law school and someone who had worked in the hospitality industry as an assistant restaurant manager and who clearly understood how to organize work and how to organize workers to get that work done. And that's when Alicia Wilson came to work for the National Fund. And I didn't know at the time that she was also a general. And that I now was going to be working for her. And I've enjoyed mostly every minute of it. As you know, when we decided to become an independent organization, we had to move from Boston, set up operations in Washington, D.C. We had to organize a board of directors. We had to get offices, business cards. We had to develop a website. We had to, do all kinds of things, incorporate, file in all kinds of states, do new contracts. And Alicia was incredibly important in all of that work. And we also learned that she is an amazing organizer for these national meetings. And as all of you, if you haven't, interacted with her before this meeting, she's probably going to send you a thank you note because she's pretty much interacted with everybody. On top of that, she led our work on young adults. And she has a passion for that. She always reminds me that she is a millennial. I'm not sure what that is, but she is someone who really cares about young adults and about getting them into good work. And so it gives me great pleasure this morning to introduce, and remember, it's Alicia. It's not Erica. It's not Alyssa. It's Elisha. Alicia Wilson, the Director of Operations for the National Fund.
Thank you. Fred, you're so kind, as always. Appreciative. Since 2015, the National Fund for Workforce Solutions has recognized businesses that successfully hire, retain, train, and recruit young adult employees. These young adult employer champions have made substantial commitments to young adults in their region to build successful careers. Because of these commitments, these organizations have seen a multitude of company-wide successes, from improved retention and employee engagement to reduced recruitment and turnover costs. Further, these companies are building a new generation of workers in their industries, ensuring a skilled workforce for decades to come. This year, we received a record number of nominations. Over 30 applications were received from 21 different communities around the country. Out of these applications, 16 companies were chosen as champions. For the first time, the champions were placed into two different categories. The first honors employers who provide high-quality jobs and successfully hire and retain 18 to 25-year-old young adults who are unemployed or underemployed and not enrolled in school. The second is for employers that participate in pre-apprenticeship and/or apprenticeship programs which prepare youth for in-demand occupations. 12 of the 16 champions, well now 14 of the 16 champions are here with us today, as well as a 2016 champion, which we will start with. I will call a representative from each organization to join us on stage and receive their award. From Fred Diedrich, our CEO and president, and Pete Strange, who's our board chair. First, we have Napoleon Bracey from Austell, USA. Jeffrey Brown from Brown's Superstores. Dana Politis from Montefiore Health System. Carrie Funk from Nationwide. Rory Duggan from Starbucks Boston. We have we have Ben Trinzi from Starbucks, Philadelphia. And our second category for Pathways to Apprenticeship for Young Adult Employer Champions, we have John Genthner from Felsomat, USA. Hans Kraus from Richard Wolf Medical Instruments.
It's not this one. All right, so here we go. Yes, we're going to hold one up. We can edit it.
Kenya Hall from Sarah Health Center. Christine Benz from Trump.
Is this the one that is missing?
No.
This is Trump, right?
Mm-hmm. Charles Daniels from Wepco Plastics.
So Tektronix is here?
Yep.
Where is well-built?
Wepco. Heather Terenzio from Tectonic Group. Peter Rila from Wittenstein, North America. Jim Jamerzek from North American Lighting. And Mario Krach from the German American Chambers of Commerce on behalf of Principal. So congratulations and thank you for all of the work that you're doing. We really do appreciate it.
You did not get the award?
I'll take care of it. After the next plenary, 2 of the employers will be featured in a workshop which will take place on the 4th floor in Congress C. I recommend that you attend. It's going to be a good one. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia, and congratulations to all those award winners. And we will make sure that the award winner gets the plaque that was missing. But my apologies. This morning, when I was making my remarks about each of the collaboratives, I mistakenly said that Ross, Janice, and Stephen were from Philadelphia when they were really from Cincinnati. Pete came up to me and he said, "We thought about jumping up and correcting you, but we were afraid you would start from the top." This is why we are so blessed at the National Fund to have a chairman like Pete Strange, because not only is he an experienced CEO who built a company, an employee-owned company in Messer Construction, but who's also active in the construction partnership in Cincinnati and very active in the Partners for a Competitive Workforce. He is truly a community leader, but he is also someone who understands nonprofits He served on a lot of boards. He served as an acting director of the Chamber of Commerce. That's correct. And so when I asked Ross Meyer, I said, do you think Pete would accept the job as chairman of the National Fund? Ross said, I think he would. And I'm so grateful that Pete did accept, because from day one, he's been a great partner to work with and has kept us loose and laughing ever since. Now, the important thing for you in your future is that you get Pete a bourbon and ask about his grandfather. This is key. Pete Strange, the chairman of the National Fund for Workforce Solutions.
Surrounded by love, I always tell Fred, don't be surprised by what I say. I'm hearing it for the first time, just as you are. It is truly a privilege to represent the board and the Partners Council of the National Fund, and first to thank our sponsors, because we couldn't do it without you, but to welcome all of you to this convening at a time of great change and great opportunity for those who are committed to investing in the talent supply chain. The roots of that change and opportunity are seen in the increase in articulation, from the White House to the State House to the boardroom to the shop floor. Everybody is talking about the need for change in how we access, how we attract, how we grow, and how we retain the talent that we will need for the future. That change in opportunity is evidenced by a growing realization that talent development is a competitive advantage in the marketplace, and we're going to hear from folks who certainly are committed to that. And most importantly, that change in opportunity is indicated by action. At the local level, a few weeks ago, some leaders asked employers to come together to develop strategies for good jobs as one of our approaches to doing something about childhood poverty in our community. 40 company leaders showed up for that first meeting, and we expect many more for the second meeting next week. At the national level, you might have seen that last week, David Taylor, the CEO of Procter & Gamble, announced that 150 CEOs have signed on to the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. And this is leadership commitment to both sharing best practices, but more importantly, to creating real change for those who are underrepresented in the workforce. So what all this means, this change in opportunity, is that the leadership, the learnings, and the commitment that are represented in this room matter now more than they ever have. And I'm delighted to be here with you because I understand that the National Fund and the people in this room are not going to wait for some sort of trickle-down effect for the people that we represent and care about, that we're here to roll some rocks that cause an avalanche of change in areas of need. And that sounds like real fun to me. So we will move on to this important plenary on why CEOs invest in their frontline workforce. It's being sponsored by the Strata Education Network, and first we want to thank them for their sponsorship, but here to say a few words about the Strata Education Network is Mr. Scott Blevins, the Vice President of University and Foundation Partnerships. Scott?
Thank you, and good afternoon. To begin, I'd like for everyone to think of one thing. If I handed you $320 right now, what is one thing that you would utilize for you personally with that $320? $320, what would you buy? Everybody have that one thing? Now I want you to think about what it would be like to have that one thing, one time a month for 1 year. Pretty awesome, right? Now think about having that one thing, one time a month for 10 years. Even better. Why we say that? Because $320 is a magic number for us at Education at Work and the Strada Education Network. Because what $320 represents is the monthly student loan payment that the average college student graduates and repays over a 10-year period. Right now in America, our students are graduating with approximately $30,000 in student debt. On top of that, what we're hearing from employers like you is our college students are lacking that professional skill set to make them successful in that entry-level position. I myself am a first-generation college student, first in my family to go to college. I was blessed because from the moment that I knew what it meant to go to a college and university, I knew that's where I was going. We had a great plan to pay for that first semester. Graduated from the first semester of college, 3.5 GPA debt-free. What we didn't necessarily have is a great way to pay for the second semester, let alone year 2, 3, and 4, and 2 years for my master's degree. I'm somebody who graduated with twice the amount of student debt and $60,000. And when I talk to college students, whether they're entry level, coming into their high school from their senior experience, or current college students, what I stress is not to be scared, because your education, your college experience is going to be the best investment that you're ever going to make, because you're investing within yourself and for your future. But what I tell them is that there's resources that are available, and take advantage of those resources. And I believe that's at the heart and soul of what the Strada Education Network does. Strada's mantra is completion with a purpose, where it's not enough just to get students to college, but really make the commitment to find those student success strategies to make sure that when a student enters in college, that all of those barriers are going to be removed throughout their college experience to graduation and making them more professionally ready. And that's where my company, Education at Work, we were the first and a very proud affiliate member of the Strada Education Network. And what we do is we partner with universities and business clients to open up campus-based contact customer support centers. So what we do with that space on campus that universities provide for us is we provide a working call center for business clients. Now, I know some of y'all might be thinking that college students, they might not necessarily like working in a call center. And that's where our value proposition and what we're able to offer students is second to none. So all of our students, number one, work with a part-time schedule that's going to be scheduled around their classes. They earn an hourly rate, but most importantly, we are committed to their education and offer $5,250 a year in tuition assistance that's going to be based on a student's GPA. So the higher performer they are, the more tuition assistance they give. To date, we've given out over $14 million in student wages and over $3.5 million in tuition assistance going directly to the university. A recent example of our success is at Arizona State University. Our partnership is just a little bit over a year old, and we've awarded those students $2 million in wages and $1 million in tuition assistance to help fund their education. I think what's most important, though, is that this money is going to students who we think are in the greatest need. So 60% of our student workforce are students of color. 50% are first-generation college students. And that's our sign of our commitment to, again, removing those obstacles and removing those burdens to make sure that students have a way to fund their higher education experience. So right now, as a nonprofit organization and at Education at Work, we have a saying that our shareholders are our students. So at this time, I'd like to invite you all to sit back and really let our students shine through. And we have a video here of some of our few students working in some of our Cincinnati locations that I think always impress our audience anytime they get to be in front, whether it's in person or in a video. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our video.
So college has always been main priority in my family. Everybody in my family went to college.
So I was born in Colombia, and so we didn't move to the United States until about 2000. And so it was always ingrained in me growing up that we have this opportunity, an opportunity that our extended family doesn't have, and that being here in the United States was going to open a lot of doors, and we couldn't just shy away from those doors.
I am one of the few in my family to actually go to college and be on the road for completion for college.
In my immediate family, I'm the first person to go to college, and I wasn't sure how I was going to pay for school. I knew I was going to take out loans just because of the way the tuition bill was, but I wasn't sure how I was going to pay for it after that because you can only take out so much money in loans. So
it was very stressful trying to figure out my financial plans as far as, paying through school because my loans didn't cover as much.
When it comes to paying for college, that was a difficulty because of finance in my family. It's not abundant. And so that's where this company has really helped me with just completing college and, just not falling in the cracks like most of my family members.
The mission of Education at Work is to help college students get through school more affordably, and also importantly, along the way, get some on-the-job experience and training to help them ultimately be more successful once they get their degree.
I didn't just learn something in school, but then I was able to go to work the next day and go, let's try it, give me a chance. And then they gave me the chance. And so now when I go to employers, I can say, not only am I able to fulfill these capacities, but I've already practiced them.
Communicating with other employees, communicating with managers really helped me to get out of my comfort zone.
And being more on the human resources end, I've learned a lot more professional skills, how you talk to certain people, how you word certain things.
It showed me through hard work and determination, you can work your way up through a company, which a lot of people my age don't even know how to do or where to start. People that are starting out in their careers, they're just starting to put the pieces together when Education at Work has already showed me the pieces and gave me that work ethic to get to where I am today.
The big idea of Education at Work is that they're preparing you, so they don't want you to stay in the call center forever. That's not the point. They want to give you the skills that you need so that when you go to a job interview and you say, here are all the skills I have, that you are what employers want.
We have the ability to get employers the type of students they need, and they're job ready. So they've been working for these companies for a number of years, so they develop many of the skills that employers today are saying they really want and that they're not getting from traditional college graduates. Skills like communications, problem solving, empathy, learning to work as part of a team. Our students come ready and prepared to tackle those kind of challenges in the workplace.
I have so many stories of students that have so many ideas that could grow any company.
What we look for in Education at Work employees, we want bright, young, energetic, tech-savvy students who really have a big dream.
Well, my major in school was psychology.
I'm an education major.
Broadcast journalism.
Public relations professional.
I'm on the path to being a lawyer and going into law school.
For us, if we can just help them a bit along the way, that's the ultimate payback for us.
And throughout that video, you heard us mention those skill sets that our students are earning and learning on the job at Education at Work. Now, I really want to highlight that by think about that last time you called in for a customer service problem. And now think about that skill set that you hear often, way too many times, that students or millennials lack upon graduation: sense of resiliency, communication skills, problem solving, troubleshooting. And you really see where we have a great fit in the professional training that we're giving our student employees. Our business clients not only see this as a metric program. Yes, we're going to provide them outstanding customer service and outstanding metrics that are equated to any onshore provider or offshore provider. But at the same time, our clients are most interested in the talent pipeline that it creates for their company. Post-graduation, we work with a financial services institution that is hiring education at work graduates at a 75% placement rate. This isn't just into their call center positions, but it's across their global enterprise in sales, marketing, IT positions. But what's even most impressive is that these students are sticking and they're being retained at a 94% rate post their first year of professional employment, which is about 25% higher than their typical internship or college recruiting program. And we believe because it's creating that sense of affinity, it's already having that student knowing their systems, their procedures, their culture of what it means to be a successful student employee. So at Education at Work, we continue on our mission to grow and be able to employ 100,000 students nationwide, which will ultimately allow us to impact the student debt crisis by $1.2 billion annually. And before I close, I also want to shout out to Mark, who's another one of the Strada Education Network affiliates. Mark's here from Road Trip Nation. You all might be familiar with Road Trip Nation from their PBS series. But Road Trip Nation is an outstanding organization that is really committed to helping students, high school and college, find their path through a series of interviews and videos and just student success tools. So make sure you check out Road Trip Nation as well. And again, in closing, I'd like to thank the National Fund for Workforce Solutions for allowing not just Education at Work and Road Trip Nation to be part of this conference, but Strada Education Network as well. So again, enjoy the rest of your conference, and thank you for allowing us to be part of this inspiring event.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you, Scott. Now it's my privilege to introduce Barbara Dyer. Barbara was the very first chair of the National Fund Investor Committee, which was the governing committee for the National Fund during our first 5 years. During her time as chair of the National Fund, Barbara was the president of the Hitachi Foundation, which was one of the original investors in the National Fund. And this past November, Hitachi awarded one of its legacy grants of $500,000 to the National Fund. Today, Barbara is a senior lecturer and executive director of the Good Companies, Good Jobs initiatives at the MIT Sloan School of Management. So please join me in welcoming Barbara.
Wow, there's bright lights, so I can't see all of your smiling faces, but it's a delight to be here. And we're going to have a conversation for a little while up here, and then at some point we're going to open up and bring you all into this conversation. I am delighted to have this stellar group of CEOs sitting with me on the stage. To my far left, we have Russell Cox, who is with Norton Healthcare, and then next to Russell, we have the CEO of R&R Transportation, Mr. Karl Robinson himself, founder and CEO. And next to me, we have Paul Newman. Paul Newman of Universal Woods. Pete Strange, you talked a lot about change and that the imperative of change and the change and opportunity that we must bring about. But we also need to recognize that part of what we're struggling with is an economy that has been in motion, in very fast motion for a good long time now. And the unsettling qualities of change as people experience dramatic changes in the whole structure of the firm and a sense of responsibility that is thrust upon them that they never really had to this extent before, that responsibility for ensuring that their funds for retirement, the responsibility of choosing a health plan, the responsibility of paying back the college loans in ways that have created a lot of stress and strain in the U.S. And regardless of where you might be on the political spectrum, it's impossible to ignore the fact that Americans, as sort of expressing this frustration and this sense of instability through the political process and through all sorts of other ways. We're in a very tough time, and part of it is a result of change, and part of it is that we need to embrace and shape that change in a way that creates really good companies, really good quality jobs, really good work for the 21st century, and also recognizes that while we as humans constantly speak of change as something very positive, we don't actually do very well with change. So we need to have an environment, an economy where we have the capacity to navigate and move through this change, but also those stabilizing forces that allow us to have the confidence and the competence and the connections to move all the way through. So I also want to focus on the fact that we've got roughly 6 million firms in the United States economy, and a good number of those firms are actually creating good quality jobs and investing in their workers. Not enough of them, perhaps, but there are many. And what we have today is a real treat, because we're going to delve into in three very different sectors: in healthcare, in transportation, and in manufacturing, and get a really good sense of the texture of these companies and what generates success for these companies, and why these three companies have made a commitment and are making a real investment in their workers. And they don't know where I'm going to start here, so you can see that they're kind of on the edge of their seat. Who's going to call on first? But Russell Cox, I had a good conversation with you a couple days ago, and I'd like to, you're at the far end, so it can bring us in. Tell us a little bit about your day. Tell us a little bit about Norton Healthcare and what, in a way that can help all of us get a sense of the texture, what does success look like, and who's part of that success story?
I knew I picked the wrong seat. I thought she'd go to the middle first. Well, first, thanks for the opportunity to be here today and be with you. It's an honor for me, and I would like to say that these guys are the real CEOs. I've just been a CEO since January. They've been a CEO a long time, so I'm clearly the rookie. But in healthcare, and especially at Norton Healthcare in Louisville, Kentucky, it's such a different industry. And I tell people all the time, what success looks like for us is very simply a great human interaction. Unfortunately, we deal with people who are at their worst, feeling bad. They bring family members with them that are anxious and don't necessarily trust anyone who is interacting with them.
Right.
So success for us is having a group of associates, employees who value having great human interactions at all levels to make sure that we can build confidence with that patient and family member, whoever it might be that's involved in the interaction that we have there. So it's a difficult scenario. The one thing we know for sure at Norton Healthcare is we can't be successful if only one area or level of our organization is successful. Mm-hmm. That's why we've chosen to invest in programs like elevating the frontline employee. Healthcare is very interesting. I keep saying interesting because I think it is. When you look at the interactions that take place, the person who typically, if you want to use this terminology of the food chain, the person that's at the top of that food chain, the physician, spends less time with the physician than the environmental services worker who's in there 2 to 3 times a day, making sure the room is good and avoiding infection control. So we look at it from the standpoint of we have to invest in all levels of employees, and we have to make sure that everyone feels engaged and empowered to create those great human interactions. So while we don't have a tangible product that we can say, there it is, we have a service that involves trust, that involves engagement, and that involves everybody doing their job to the best of their ability. Fortunately for us in healthcare, we have a very good career ladder. You can start very much at an entry level, and you can develop yourself within Norton Healthcare and Norton University to get to anywhere you want to go. I say all the time in our onboarding process, The best part about Norton Healthcare is where you start is not necessarily where you finish. That's up to you.
So I just want to get a bit of a sense of that environmental, you called the employee an environmental service?
Environmental service worker.
An environmental service worker. Does that environmental service worker have as crisp a view as you've just described of his or her role in that whole system? And how do you get to that point? I mean,
it's a really good question. It's one, and the word culture is overused. I'm not going to overuse it. But I'm going to give you a little bit of how we think we differentiate in that regard. For that environmental services worker to feel just as engaged and just as responsible for that patient, they have to feel that we view them as an important part of the process. You can't just say you're an important part of the process. You have to, on an individual basis, say, how can we help you make your life better? How can we help you get skills that will help you grow and develop? But it's not just necessarily about work. How can we help you with courses in what we call Norton University, our workforce development training program? How can we help you manage money? How can we help you understand how to stay out of debt? How do we invest in you as a person? That's really how we build that culture so that they feel very much part of a bigger organization and a bigger sort of goal than just that environmental services part of it. So you've heard me say the word engagement so many times. We truly believe that is a differentiator. And by the way, folks, people in healthcare are called to be in healthcare.
Sure.
Rarely do you find somebody who just stumbles into healthcare. So we're fortunate that we have a workforce that felt a calling to serve others.
Right.
So ours is a bit of a how do we fulfill that for them, and how do we give them a work environment where they can do that?
I want to get back to this question of culture in a minute, but you make a perfect segue because we tend to assume that this is the case in healthcare. But let's take a look at transportation, Karl Robinson. Talk to us a little bit about a day in the life of R&R Transportation, and give us a sense of your business and your model and who are your customers and what's important in your success equation.
Well, in R&R, we've been in business 27 years, and we're kind of a family-owned business. I have two daughters that work for me, and one of my brothers, and I have a cousin. Sometimes that's daunting, but
having a cousin or having them in the business?
Having them in the business, you know what I mean. But I also have other individuals that work with us, like our drivers, who most people think that the drivers are not an intricate part of the business, but they're the most important part of the business. Because without someone to drive the vehicle, I can't drive 14 vehicles. So I need them more than they need me. And so I really try to let them understand that they're an integral part of the business. And I think a lot of companies don't do that. They don't let their employees know how important they are. And I try my best to do that. And in our industry, just to show you a little differentiation, our industry has a turnover rate at times of over 110%.
Wow, that's impressive.
There's over 200,000 drivers, a 200,000 driver shortage in the United States. And that's just drivers. That's not counting support people in the logistics industry. So we have a very bad problem in our industry. It's an image problem, and it's also a cultural problem. People work with you because of different things, but Simon Sinek, I don't know exactly the words, but he basically said people will work for you for your money, but they'll work for you more if they understand your why and why you do what you do and how they can be a part of it, and they'll work for you for more than money then. So we got to get, in our industry, we got to get it to a point where they'll work for more than money.
Right. So I want to tease this out a little bit more because, you know, we can see this in a healthcare job because you're helping people, they come in and they have need. But in driving a truck, you're able to create that same sense of purpose.
Right.
How do you do that?
Well, basically, my drivers have their own business cards, and they give them out to our customers, and they engage our customers. We all become more than just R&R Transportation. It becomes more of a family type atmosphere.
Right.
So what I'm trying to do is make sure that the customer is serviced, make sure that they understand that they're a great part of our business, and we don't have a salesperson. I'm not a good salesperson, so I don't hire salespeople. My drivers are my best salespeople, and we've continued to grow with that one thing. Our drivers are our sales force, they are our marketing firm, they are our best asset.
Right, right. So I want to also draw this connection that we made over lunch, was somewhat hypothetical, but not really, that you deliver mattresses for CERTA.
Right.
And the hypothetical was, what if you needed in Norton some number of mattresses, what's the expectation of time on delivery, and what you can you tell us that story?
Well,
This is a wonderful picture of what actually happens and who the customer, and how this all works.
Like with Norton Health Systems, if they ordered 150 mattresses, their customers are the patients, and their customers need those mattresses to be comfortable. So when they order the mattresses, let's say they ordered in a day, they can have those mattresses delivered by next week, by next Tuesday or Wednesday. And our part of the supply chain is to ensure that they get there when they need them so that their customers can be comfortable. And my people that work with me, that's why I'm here. I mean, if I didn't have good people working for me, I could not do what I'm doing right now.
Right, so you're a critical link in that supply chain, and you're working in between those two players, and unless you're successful, they cannot be successful.
They cannot be successful.
Exactly right.
Yes.
That's exactly. Until you need people that feel as strongly about that success and their role in that link. So just like the environmental services workers needs to really see their role in the larger system and how they contribute to success, that's exactly what your drivers, how they see themselves in this system.
And also we educate them. Virginia Fox, Congresswoman Virginia Fox says all the time, you don't train people, you educate people. And we send them to community colleges, we send them to different courses so they can upskill.
Right.
I went to the upskilling part, and they need that. They need it so that they don't just continue to be a driver, but they come in and they move through other facets of the industry.
Fabulous.
So if they don't stay with us, that's fine. If they get enough education where they feel that they can go somewhere else, that's good. But I have about a 3 or 4% turnover rate, so that doesn't.
They're not going very far.
No.
So I want to get back to the training components in greater specificity in a minute, but I want to turn to Paul Newman over here and have us hear a little bit about Universal Wood and what happens in a day and who are the people and who are the customers. We have one of your wonderful products, but...
Yes, thank you. We're in Louisville, Kentucky. Also have a couple international locations. We have a couple hundred people that work with us, and we manufacture digitally imageable products. You guys got coasters earlier, but and that kind of stuff. And I will say on the coaster, it takes about 6 seconds of labor that costs about $50,000 a year, because between labor and salary and benefits, that's what we pay our teammates. But we've also got a team that's engaged across a variety of parts of our business that I think within another 18 months, it'll be about 4 seconds to make this coaster. And that's being done in an environment where, to your point, every job is important. And I think probably everybody who's an employer out here, or you can go into almost any business and they'll talk about, oh yes, everybody's job is important, people are our most important asset, you hear all those things. And the question is, do your actions match up with what you say? You know, and for us, we've worked very hard over the last 10 to 15 years to dramatically reduce the distinctions between blue collar and white collar jobs. We've invested in training because we, like tons of other businesses, talk about continuous improvement, but we think continuous learning is absolutely the critical component to continual improvement. And in the absence of continual improvement, you die in the marketplace.
Right.
And so for our customers, for digitally imageable products that we sell in 80 countries around the world, and in mezzanine decking that goes to Amazon, Walmart, these massive distribution centers, both of these niche markets, we're a global leader. But we're able to do that because of the quality of people that produce those things for us every day.
So you talked about how the time to delivery is exponentially shrinking, most likely because of automation?
The time for manufacturing.
For manufacturing,
sorry,
okay.
It would be exponentially shrinking. Some of that is through automation. Some of that is through design. In this particular case, we've generally automated that product, but it still has a full-time person that is watching it be produced and looking at the machine. That person is going to be transitioning into another work cell that is right beside it, and now going to probably spend 50% of their time on it instead of 100% of their time, and that cuts the cost of the coaster. Most people, we go to a trade show, believe we manufacture these products in China. You know, we don't. We make them in Louisville, Kentucky, and we make them with people that are making $17 an hour.
Right, right. And you don't have to, so there's this hysteria in the nation about automation. Some people claim it's the end of work. Some people claim that it's replacing work.
That's why we'll all be healthcare.
And you know, there's also the reality, which is that it's not necessarily moving as fast as a lot of people think. There's also this sort of connection. I see it as a dance, almost like a tango, and we're learning the choreography of people and machines moving forward together. You've just described that very scenario.
Yeah, but for us, right, what gives people the confidence, we haven't had a layoff in ever. You know, and we haven't had a layoff in ever because if you want people to be committed to improvement, if you want people to be committed to automation, if you want people to be committed to making it work, they have to have confidence that they got a job at the end of the process. That's right. And so for us, we're saying, hey, we went through 2009, had our business drop off 25%, everybody still had a job. And if we can survive that, we can survive not having somebody make coasters because we've automated it. We will find something productive to do. We will grow because of the commitment of people to the business and the business to people. Steve Dawson did a fabulous job of writing up something when he came and visited our company in terms of trust and engagement and all those things. You got the benefit of going first and got to use all of our thunder. But I think probably for all three of us, you hit on the important part. Everybody's job is important, but the issue is, do we actually mean it? Do we actually do things about it? You know?
Well, so we're operating in a tough competitive environment, and you, the three of you may absolutely mean it. I have no doubt that you mean it. But I also recognize that there are enormous pressures that come at you every day that probably force you to have to consider how you carry out this commitment. And sometimes, and probably others that you know in similar sectors, have made a different decision. So maybe you can help us understand the pressures that you undergo to stay true to this commitment, because we know a lot of companies that say this, that do it to a point, but then when push comes to shove, there are layoffs or they're replacing people with machines. I mean, how do you give us a better, more textured sense of this?
Well, from my perspective, if you don't view this activity, this philosophy as an investment, don't enter into it. Just because the folks who are working for your organization trying to achieve your mission on a daily basis will see right through that. And you'll be in a downward spiral quickly.
So authenticity, because your employees themselves will see right through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you'll hear me say over and over again that we view this as an investment and not a cost. Again, in healthcare, what we're selling you is an interaction. And we have to have people who believe in that interaction. And we view that as very much an investment in engagement and an investment in absolute empathy. If you can't convey that as an organization, they're never going to believe that.
And you can get through a very crazy, almost impossible to understand system of reimbursements where some of the, and all of these pressures and uncertainty with healthcare constantly either on the chopping block or, all of this swirl of external pressures, the reimbursement system, the changes in policy, and somehow you can still hold firm and make these investments. So what makes that possible for you to be able to, because others aren't necessarily making that investment?
It's, you ready to hear that word again? It's engagement. We couldn't do it if the folks who are delivering the care every day, from the environmental service aide to the food service worker to the very technical surgeon who's absolutely doing complicated procedures, if they weren't engaged in the process, and if they didn't feel a common mission around doing it as conveniently, as efficiently, with as high level of quality as possible, but most importantly, with that great human interaction. And I've said to our employees over and over again since January, you worry about the great human interactions and everything else will take care of itself. Because just as you said, your drivers are your salespeople. Well, guess what? Our environmental services people are our salespeople. Our nurses are our salespeople. No one looks, when someone comes into their room, when you're in a hospital, when you're receiving health care, nobody says, well, you only make $8.32 an hour, so I'm not going to have as much expectation of you as somebody who comes in that's making $100,000 a year. They expect that same level of service, the same level of interaction, the same level of excellence. So it has to be from that frontline employee all the way through. You have to invest in them.
So how do you structure it and make it systematic? I mean, you're talking about culture, you're talking about engagement. These are sort of, how do you build it into an organization and make it, and when you're gone and the next person comes in.
I just got here in January.
I'm not pushing you out. I'm not pushing you out. I want you to have a nice long tenure there. But you hear a lot about the culture of the founder. We're going to talk to a founder pretty soon, but and then the founder leaves and the whole thing falls apart, or the culture at the top. How do you make it systematic? How do you make it stick?
That's right.
What are the pieces?
I think that one of the most critical pieces is we evaluate leaders of people on so many things, and one that's so often forgotten is, how many of your people have you developed to go do something else? If I'm accountable for making sure that everyone in my area has the opportunity to become better at their jobs, or learn new skills to go to another job, or learn skills that help them have a better life, that's one of those accountabilities that we view as very important.
So are you measured? Will you be measured on those?
Absolutely.
But I would suspect that that's unusual for a health system to measure its CEO on those.
I think that if you view that your organization is of service to your society and community, then it's within the mission that you espouse on a daily basis. And I absolutely appreciate the fact that employees, and you talked about they feel the commitment of during tough times we're with you. Healthcare is all about change. We have to change daily, and I know everybody does, but if we can empower and if we can educate employees to understand and to deal with that in such a way as to say, if I can just do what I am supposed to do, and if I can find ways to make myself a better person, I'm going to be a better employee.
So one thing you point out is the accountability at the top, that is, you're being held accountable for this. But you also talk a lot about engagement and the sense of ownership and responsibility from the front lines all the way up. And I believe that's true. And we've looked at a number of healthcare organizations where all of that is in play. But I've also heard recently of one or two places, because the economy has changed and the unemployment rate has changed and there's much more possibility for mobility, that some people on the front lines are moving from a place that's fully engaged and doing all of the things that we think are terrific to a place that doesn't do any of that but provides a higher wage. I also hear from some that some of the engaged workers feel like it's too much engagement, too much responsibility, they're feeling a burden. So I just wanted to put some challenges out, but I also want to move to these other gentlemen.
That's an advantage we have, I think, because there is no higher calling than taking care of another human being.
Yeah.
And, you know, rarely do you hear someone say, you know, I'm glad I can't do more for this patient. I mean, everyone says, how can I do more for this patient? What can I do to make this situation better? Because there very much is a calling there. And to your point of salaries being the thing that draws people away, the very pressures you talked about, we understand those are real, and people may have to make those decisions.
Right.
You know, being responsible stewards, we have to look at what we can pay and
right. And wage
what we can
competitiveness
offer.
is important, I'm sure.
But I think what differentiates us again is the fact that word travels quickly, that you might not be the highest wage, but you are the best environment, and that you are willing to invest in education opportunities. You can at work go to college classes. You can at work finish your GED. You can at work while be supporting, understand what level of education you need to get the next job that is a higher wage. We make it very, very tangible and very understandable that you are in control of your destiny. We are going to put the pieces in place to help you achieve that.
Right.
Now, I believe as a CEO that while no one will ever convince me that you can give me a spreadsheet with a great ROI, I can look and see what's happening in turnover. I can very clearly see what's happening in preventable occurrences. I can look at patient satisfaction and see what difference it's making.
Right.
And so for me, it's an investment that we should continue to look at to say this is the fuel that brings what we need to have as a product.
How, I do want to move to, but I just have to ask this. In healthcare, there's this important link between the payers and the deliverers. And the payers aren't always looking for what you've just described, but they should be, because ultimately, in the long run, it saves them on costs. So how do you get the payers to turn around?
The patients in healthcare, and we hate in healthcare to call patients consumers. I don't. They are consumers. The consumers are becoming more educated. The consumer who used to be directed by, I'll do whatever my doctor said, now has just a bevy of data to look at and make decisions. And one of the things that they're going to opt towards is the place that cares about me as a human being, the place that I feel most comfortable, the place that treats my family like I want to see them treated. And they can influence those payers. So you can't just want to be the employer of choice. You have to be the place of choice. We want to be the best place for you to get care, and we want to be the best place to give care if you're going to work in healthcare.
So you think the power is in the patient consumer who's going
experience.
to talk to their insurance companies about this?
And the experience, of understanding this is so convenient for me, why would I want to go anywhere else? And I feel good about myself and what they're doing for my family, that this is the best place for me.
Let's look at transportation in a more sort of focused way at how this plays out. How do you train your drivers? How do you build into your culture and into your system all of the things that you described a few minutes ago.
Well, remember, it's educate, not train, educate.
Okay, important. That's important. That's important.
Again, there's a thing called law of attraction. And like Mr. Cox was saying, I think a lot of the times, if you have frontline workers that buy into your culture and the way, why you do what you do, why do you do what you do? They buy into it, they attract other people that buy into it. That's what you want. You want it where the people that work with you bring other people that think just like you do or want the same things you do. What is your why? Why do you do what you do? One of our slogans is simple logistics. We want to make it simple for our customers to do business with us. If they need bills of lading, they have a card for the driver. They call the driver and tell the driver, bring me some bills of lading when you come. If they have a problem, they can call the driver or they can call the office. If they need me, they have my cell phone number. So there has to be a cultural thing. There has to be something where the frontline worker doesn't differentiate himself from the CEO.
Right.
They're all one.
All problem solvers, it sounds like. Everybody's trying to solve whatever it is that the customer needs.
Right.
Yeah.
And see, what we don't have now in our educational system, we don't have it where we're teaching them or educating them on how to be problem solvers. That's one of the biggest things we hear from employers. People that come out of the college system or out of the high school system don't have problem solving abilities. They haven't been educated in that or taught
Right.
that.
So how do you educate your say I just come to work for you and I think that I'm here to drive a truck. It was a friend of mine that told me, so I'm the right material, but I haven't been developed yet. Right?
You send them with another
how
driver.
do I understand that my job is to help solve problems and broaden my perspective? How do you?
I let them pick one of the drivers they want to go with, and they stay with them for a week or two.
And that driver knows how to
And that
teach?
driver, no, not really.
They just observed it.
They know what our why is. They know why we do what we do. So they teach that to a new individual. And if they don't stay, then that means they weren't going to buy into the culture.
Right.
They weren't going to buy into why we do what we do. So but most of the time when they hear from a driver, not from me, not as the president of the company, they hear it from another employee that works there and it has the same, I'm gonna say they have the same attributes as they do. Then they'll listen to them.
Right.
You know, and do you know where that came from? One of the people that's a driver. He said, you don't need to be the one telling the message. We need to be telling the message. They'll believe us faster than they'll believe you.
Right.
So that's why they do what they do. I mean, they know what.
So you're relying on the quality drivers that you have to be the role models and to help educate the new drivers, but you haven't, or have you, put also in place something that captures that wisdom in a more
well, we have a formal program
That's
where
what I was
they
wondering.
go through.
Okay.
And if we're training a new driver, we have a relationship with a nonprofit called Welfare Reform Liaison, and they have 4 to 6 weeks of soft skills.
Okay.
Okay.
And this is a nonprofit in the community
This is a nonprofit in the community.
How did you choose that particular nonprofit, or did they choose you?
Well, I couldn't afford to go out and start my own truck driving school. So
All right.
I said, well, I can't do this. Okay, let me find one.
Yeah,
So-
and did this particular nonprofit have some knowledge of your industry, or?
No, they just they had a job training program. And we just came together and said, listen, you have a job training program. We need drivers in the industry. This is good for everyone. Let's see if it'll work.
Yeah.
So I went to them. They said, okay, let's work it out. So they do the soft skills. All right. Then I made a deal with a truck driving school in Thomasville, North Carolina. And I went to them and said, we want you to train the drivers. Well, truck driving schools really don't train drivers. They train them how to do the paperwork, but then they come out and they don't have the skills to drive the vehicle. So what happens after they take 4 to 6 weeks and they get that CDL, then they come to us. And we put them with drivers for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks until the driver comes to us and says, okay, he's ready, or he ain't never gonna be ready, you need to fire him.
Right.
You know, so that's what we do, and they come in, but during that time frame, they're interacting with the drivers, and they're seeing how we do things, and how we want you to do things. They're meeting the customers. The customers are interacting with them. So they're getting their education the whole time.
Right.
And then after the trainer comes in and says, okay, they're ready, then we put them out in their own truck. And normally we try to assign them their own truck because they get ownership. If something happens to it, they take it. We lease our truck, so they take it to Ryder and they get it fixed. And I had started putting their names on them, and one of the drivers came in and said, I don't want nobody to know who I am. And I said, okay, we won't put the names on them, but they got their own trucks. They have their own numbers. So that's how you keep them engaged. And then you have meetings, impromptu meetings, where you just see them and you walk up and say, what's going on? Anything that I need to know or you need to tell me, and things like that. And then when a driver, for instance, we had 2 drivers last year buy new homes. And we sent out invitations to the other drivers for a open house to their house. And then one of the guys come in and said, why am I having an open house again? And I said, because you need the other drivers to come see your house. So,
great.
So we help them with their housewarmings and things like that.
So it's like a family. It's a family.
You want to interact. We're going to the baseball game next month. Their whole families. We take the whole family to the baseball games.
That's nice. So I was going to ask you how you respond to all of this noise about self-driving vehicles, and it sounds to me like you have created a much more involved and comprehensive job than just driving a truck. Right. So first of all, I don't think self-driving vehicles are immediate, but who knows? How do you respond? I mean, is it because it's a larger job that you may not be so concerned about it, or?
Well, that's probably 30, 40 years down the road, if it ever gets to that point.
Okay.
The other thing is that the same people that create software are the same people that create corrupt software.
So you don't trust it. You don't trust it.
Think about it a moment. I'm going to create some software, but hey, I can get more money if I can put a bug in it. So that's the way. That's the way I think.
Okay.
You can talk to him later, right?
Yeah, that's okay,
Yeah.
But the other thing is that even though they've created, Volvo is right 10 minutes from my office. Volvo's 10 minutes from the office. They've created a self-driving vehicle. But you gotta have a driver in there.
Yeah.
You still have to have a driver in the vehicle.
Well, and your people aren't just drivers. They're doing a lot more problem solving.
Right.
The vehicle could be driving itself with your drivers actually doing more problem solving on other things. So it sounds to me like if you define the job very narrowly as simply moving a vehicle with some cargo, there's more risk than the way you've described the role of your drivers.
And so it's all relative. They're gonna come up with ways to do things more efficiently, but that doesn't mean it's gonna eliminate the human factor.
Right. Great. And how does it look in
Can
university?
I return to your question around pressures and whatever?
Sure.
The whole point of training, of investments in your workforce, et cetera, is to be able to deal with the pressures.
Say more about that. How do you?
Well, I mean, that's how do you become more productive? How do you become better able to have a safe work environment? How do you make a better quality product? How do you innovate around new stuff. You innovate around that through education and training and engagement and commitment. It's an advantage. It's not a disadvantage. We're blessed with stupid competition. You know,
I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pete. I probably borrowed that from you. I'm sorry. You know, and it is, you know, and so that if you say, you know, in the hospital business, in the transportation business, in our business, it doesn't really matter. If you have people who say, I can no longer afford to pay people a reasonable wage, if you have people who say, I can no longer afford to invest in training, they're in the process of going out of business. You know, and they can do some collateral damage while they're in the process of it, but they'll be gone. I mean, the people that stick, the people that stay are the ones that are committed, who have a vision, who have a strategy. But part of that strategy for all three of our businesses, and that's the reason we're sitting up here, is around investing in the people that work with our business, because it's core to the success of the business.
Sure, but let's tell me a little bit about those who invest in your business. That is, are you privately held, publicly traded, privately held?
We are privately held.
And have you ever looked for a loan or an equity investor, and have they tried to put pressures on you to cut your labor costs? And
oh, Lord God.
I'm just wondering.
No, we'd kick them out. But
important point. You can choose your investors, right?
Of course. And we choose our lenders, and our lenders look at our P&L.
Right.
And our P&L, they come in and they say, we'd like to loan you more money. Why would they like to loan us more money? Because they know we're a good credit risk. Why are we a good credit risk? Because the people that work for our business are going to deliver results and are delivering results. You know, it's you do this for a living, right? Good jobs, good, you know, good economy, whatever. I'm sorry, I didn't.
I've only been doing this for a short while, right?
But there's a lot of academic research that you're much more familiar with than I am around the fact that paying people money is actually conducive to good results in a business. It isn't, when people think about, actually here, show of hands, right? How many of you guys go to work and think of yourself as a unit labor cost for your employer? Anybody? I mean, do you want to be thought of in that way? But at the point where companies do, they reduce the people that work for their business to a notation on a P&L or a unit labor cost, and the idea is you have to reduce unit labor cost, and you probably do, except that if you only focus on unit labor cost and you're not thinking about quality, you're not thinking about employee retention, and you're not thinking about customer retention, and you're not thinking about winning in the marketplace and how those people are going to help you win in the marketplace,
you're missing the point. Right.
Thank you.
So all of these stories that we hear about pressures from capital markets, a really great CEO like the three of you would just stand up to that and say, no.
Let me back up, and I wouldn't characterize myself as a great CEO.
No, I would. I said that.
And all of us actually are not publicly traded in terms of capital markets,
That's right.
And so that from that standpoint, it's true. But there are lots of people who are in capital markets. You know, I mean, let's think about, you know, companies that have done fabulously well, right? Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, right? Any of those guys having a strategy that says we want to pay the people that work here less?
Amazon's had some problems, but
Amazon has. Amazon in Louisville, Kentucky now has to pay the people that work in their warehouses at Christmas $15 an hour, and they have to pay it because that's where the market is going. But Amazon in Seattle isn't doing that. You know, and so that a strategy where you're saying we want to diminish or minimize the people that work for us is a losing strategy.
It's a losing strategy. Losing strategy. Certainly is a losing strategy over the long run. But there is a lot of pressure from capital markets of all sorts, private equity investors who believe they know how to run a business better than the person who's running the business, put pressure on cutting labor costs. It's usually the first thing that they look at. Training gets. You've been able to stand up to that by making the case that this is really a good business strategy, which is important.
A little bit careful here because we have bondholders. How we get our debt is people buy bonds. So we do have.
You do have
people,
capital markets.
We do have people that we have to answer to, and we meet with them regularly. And one of the things that I say all the time, and I think hopefully everyone here understands this, to think that we spend about $11 to $12 million a year in education, training, workforce development. It's the most naive thought in the world to think that if we discontinued that $12 million would fall straight to the bottom line.
Right.
I mean, that's the most erroneous thought ever, because what you're doing when you do that is you're putting the rest of it in great jeopardy. You're not going to maintain what you have and just get rid of $12 million of costs. You're taking the top line and just saying we're willing to give that up too. Because if you don't have that investment, you're not going to have this upside.
Right.
So our folks that hold our bonds understand that. And we always say that we always work hard with bondholders at saying, this is what makes us different. Don't think of this as
So there's an important education role for the CEO with respect to their lenders, their investors. You've described the lenders and the way that they look at your profit and loss statement. You've described your bondholders and a relationship that you have. This is a really important point. Gets us a little bit off of the specific kind of tactics of your workforce development, but it also creates an enabling environment for you to continue to make those investments and to withstand some of those pressures. And I think that's really what I'm trying to pull out of this conversation, is that it's often an excuse.
Right.
Because it's very hard to withstand those pressures, and companies need the funding.
Okay. I'll give you an analogy, right? Any salespeople in the audience, right? What's the easiest thing to sell on? Price, right? If you start selling on price and move away from value, you know you've got problems as a business. This is exactly the same. If you start only thinking about the cost and not thinking about the value, you're screwed as a business. It's not going to work. It's this, not investing in people, not thinking and understanding that they're important is the equivalent of just a race to the bottom.
So how do you describe that value in concrete terms? You've made a really good point in our conversations, pushing back on this simplistic notion of ROI. But you've got to explain value somehow in a way that's tangible. So how do you do it?
Sorry. I need a repeat on the question. How do you explain
you talk about
value of what? Value of investment, value of our company, value of the people that work for our company? Which one?
The value of this kind of investment in people. You just said that if you're competing just on price, if you're making the case just on price, you're sunk. You really have to talk about value. So, and we're talking about explaining this to those outside of the company. How do you make that value? You talked about how you make that value tangible to the lender. Just look at the profit and loss statement. Look at how.
Okay.
But you've also pushed back on this sort of simplistic notion of ROI, right?
So I was an economics major, got what I felt like was a good education, right? And I'm assuming everybody is familiar with the research on the return to college education over lifetime value, right? $1 million more of lifetime earnings, right? Okay. Education pays dividends.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, we're talking about education paying a dividend for the person, but the person that person is working for
Gets the dividend too.
also gets a dividend. They're not paying them $1 million so that they can make 800,000. They're paying them $1 million because those people are bringing 1.5 million or some other number of value into their business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not any different than that. This is when we invest in training, when we invest in 10% of our teammates are going to college right now, and we're picking up the tab, and 10% of the people that work in our business already have completed college degrees that we paid for. That return is coming to them.
Got it.
But it's also coming to us.
Yep. Got it. Now,
We're
been getting
ruthless
the
capitalists that happen to be
smart,
thinking about also being seen as nice guys.
Right. I see this as I worked for many years in public policy, and we always talked about the laboratories of democracy. I think all of you are the laboratories of capitalism. And it looks at how we can have a different kind of angle and edge on our capitalist system. I got the 5-minute warning, and I promised you all that you would be part of this conversation. I thought we had about 15 minutes, so I'm going to open up to the audience, but you should know it's really hard to see you because of the lights. So questions, comments, anybody want to weigh in, take on any of? Yes. Stand up, speak up, and tell us who you are. Oh, good, there's a roving mic. You're great.
Tim McMurtry, Director of the Milwaukee Area Workforce Funding Alliance. Thank you all for coming, and thank you also for investing in your workers and doing that, the growth piece in worker retention. How do you as CEOs talk to your HR managers relative to being able to onboard folks that might not have all the boxes checked, but have the DNA to be great for your company, and the HR person not act as a gatekeeper, keeping potentially good workers out of the business because they might not all look the right way or check all the right boxes?
He's sitting right next to you if you want to ask him right there to answer the question. It's a great question. It's a really good question, and I'm going to give you a very brief answer. The conversations that Tony and I have, Christy and Jackie and I have all the time. We have to start with, do people have the right heart? And I'm not talking about aortic function. I'm talking about, is there a heart of service within people? That's the first pass for us. We are so diverse, we have so many opportunities for people, and we have such a commitment to educating that if we can start with people who have the right heart, we'll find the right place for them. And we'll give them the opportunity to take their destiny in their own hands. So it really is more about an empathic service orientation, indoctrination. We can do great things with people who are in it because they feel like they're called. We can teach you about anything you need to know to be successful. But what I can't teach you is that caring heart. Sounds like a hokey answer, but it's true.
You want to take it?
Well, for me, I fire my HR person because they don't make that decision. That's not in their wheelhouse. But bottom line is, I'll be firing my daughter, so I'll be in trouble. But again, no, I think anybody can be educated into any type of position in any company if you just take the time. I've been working with reentry for years, and some of my best and longest employed employees are from the system. And some people won't give them a chance, and that's not the way that the system is supposed to be set up first. And secondly, they have something to prove, and you need to give them the opportunity to prove that. Whatever it takes as far as working with your state and your local government, that's what you should do. So, but my HR person, we have a program that they go through, and they sit down with them and they go over the handbook. And most people do a handbook, and I've always said this, a handbook is not only for the employee, it's for the employer too. You're making a commitment to that employee also. So as far as somebody to be terminated because the HR person, or not hired because the HR person doesn't feel like they'd be a good fit, we may discuss it, but I'm the boss.
For us, our take on that's a little bit different. You know, we hire for brains and ethics, and at the core, we believe discrimination is stupid, and so that companies that discriminate are costing themselves money in terms of they're curtailing their workforce opportunities. So that for us, we have, out of, I don't know, about 200 people in Louisville, we actually have 23 different nationalities represented in our workforce there. And we just hired a guy that's 71 years old. You know, that we believe in opportunity. Now, I have nothing to do with the people we hire. We have committees that our teams actually do the interviewing, and you interview with multiple people and all that, but part of the reason you interview with multiple people is we don't want one person to make that decision around that and to be doing that. We hire for, again, brains, ethics, and we end up with nice.
Cool. That's great. Other questions? Back. It is Steve Dawson, I think.
Yeah, I'm Steve Dawson. This is Steve Dawson. I had a question for Paul. I had the honor of visiting Universal Woods in Louisville a couple of months ago, and what was particularly impressive was the team-managed teams, which you haven't had a chance to talk about. I wanted to give you a chance to at least describe those and perhaps do a little advertisement for the workshop coming up with your other team members who are here with you. So could you talk about that a bit?
Sure. What Steve was asking about is about 5 or 6 years ago, we and we're a manufacturing business. We eliminated floor supervision and went to tech advisors for those teams, and we now have, and actually then once it worked kind of in the plant, we decided we probably needed to eliminate office supervision too, and so that all of us work we have a marketing team, we have a sales team, whatever. And then it's not that we don't have leads and we don't have people in that have different responsibilities in that, but those teams are responsible for figuring out their work. Those teams are responsible for that. And what you get out of that is, yes, it is engagement, is commitment, but to make it work, you have to be willing to pour in training, you have to share information, you have to be transparent, you have to give them the tools to make good decisions. You know, and so yes, so part of our investment in training and whatever, and part of the payoff on that is becoming a more streamlined business that ultimately can compete in the marketplace. Again, we are a global leader manufacturing in the United States with great benefits and paying, you know, again, somebody starts with our company and they're going to make about $35,000 the first year, and then, you know, and then they get benefits from the first day they walk in our door.
Impressive. Other questions, comments?
And Steve would, having set it up, would say it's remiss if for people who want to continue this conversation, we're one of the seminars that goes, and you get to talk to much more intelligent people about our company than I, because we brought 4 different folks from our business with us, including, in Steve's vernacular, some people that actually work in the business, you know, in terms of making coasters and things like that.
Making things. So. Yeah. And that write-up is available, I know, out there. So I picked one up last night. It's great, Steve. Other questions? Yes.
David Goldberg from CSM Learn. A lot of this, I must say, is preaching to the choir, I think, with this audience. And we know that not all of the CEOs in America are as enlightened as these CEOs. And this question is for Barbara, who's probably done some studies of this. what fraction of employers in the United States do have similar sorts of thoughts about their workforce? Is it 50%, 10%, 5%, 1%? Is there any sort of even seat of the pants idea as to what that number would be?
No. Really, there's no data that I'm aware of that quantifies the numbers of employers that are inclined to operate their businesses this way. I can say that when we at the Hitachi Foundation first started out with this work, and I see Tom Strong in the audience, who was really one of the key players, along with Mark Popovich, in this work on pioneer employers, we were advised that there was just a handful of idiosyncratic employers that actually cared about workers, and most employers don't, particularly in the middle economy, which is where we were looking. And so we decided to test that assumption and see what was out there. And we were really delighted to discover more employers than we could possibly profile. That doesn't mean that doesn't tell you anything about percentages, because it was through trusted links that we were able to find these employers, but it wasn't difficult, which continues to motivate me to bring light to the fact that this is a significant, I can say significant without any numbers behind it, but a significant part of the U.S. economy. Under the radar in some ways because it's very local and generally mid-sized companies, but really an important part of the economy and great role models for more. And I'd say that there are many other businesses that are poised to move in this direction that aren't fully there, but are looking for ways to move in this direction. So that's why the National Fund is so important, and the employer engagement of the National Fund is so critically important, because this is really a good business strategy, and often the best evidence of that is other businesses that are doing it. So,
and if you look at the last Fortune magazine that had the 100 best companies to work for in America, that obviously is focused around larger companies, you'll see that there are returns on investment to this, that those companies are generally in the top quartile of returns to stockholders, and in terms of profits they make. This isn't, some naive, we're doing this because it's a fairy tale thing. We're doing it because it works. And part of the reason for, I think, having us as a panel is to help you guys understand that, so that it's not just us talking about it, it's 400 people talking about it and beginning to convince some of the people who haven't been enlightened yet that that is in fact a better strategy than trying to cut wages and cut your way to prosperity. It ain't gonna work.
Right. Okay, now it's really 5 minutes. We'll take one or two more questions or comments.
I'm a small, minute employee in the transportation industry, and it doesn't matter the size of your company. If you want to be successful, you asked earlier what the measure of success is. Well, I'm still in business for one, after 27 years, that's a good measure of success. And two, I'm employing people and their families are being part of our family. So that is success to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Great panel. Kelly Ryan with Encourage in Central Wisconsin. And I just want to say it's good to hear from good capitalists. And I want to make a comment, and that is someone earlier this morning from the podium said it's great to be in a room full of foundations and funders, right? And to follow up on what Paul just said about the Fortune 100 and the practice and the demonstration of ROI on human capital investments, those of us that do have investment portfolios through our foundations can choose to make investments in publicly traded firms that practice investment in their human capital and workforce. And so the more recent example was Walmart choosing to raise the base level of pay for entry workers and receiving short-term pushback, right, on cost reduction of human capital. And those of us that believe that that's vital to our communities and to the nation, you need to put our money into those organizations.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you, Kelly. One last. Who wants to be last? Well, if not, I want to thank our panel. What an extraordinary group of gentlemen. And I also want to thank Strata for making this possible today, and to all of you at the National Fund. And here we have our fearless leader ready to
send us to the next assignment.
For not leaving while we were
That's
talking.
right.
We
That's right.
appreciate it very
Yeah,
much.
we had a great conversation up here.
So thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Barbara. Thank you, everybody on the panel. Really appreciate it. And it was a great discussion, and so important to hear that from you. And I grabbed the microphone at one point to say, and what can the National Fund do, to ensure that that number of companies grows? And I think Paul very quickly answered by showing the examples. And I think that's what we did. We did one employer profile on Universal Woods. We have a great case study on Norton Healthcare. And so that's what we're going to continue to do to build and spread the word. But we need to hear from you also about what you need from us to help us be better at this, okay? We have a job quality community of practice, and we want people to engage with that and learn from what is happening on the ground. And again, to continue to give us feedback about how can we grow the number of companies. We know we have a critical mass, and we have to just continue to promote it and make it larger so that next year we're closer to that inclusive prosperity, right? Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So just a couple of housekeeping notes before we break for the next set of workshops. So we have a fairly tight time frame this afternoon with our next plenary, which starts at 4. So the workshops go from 2:15 to 3:45. And just for those of you who haven't already figured it out, the Commonwealth rooms are on this floor down the hall. The Congress rooms, all the Congress rooms, are up on the 4th floor. You have to take the elevator. You can't take the escalator. It doesn't go to the 4th floor, okay? So that's one thing. And then when we finish the second plenary, it's scheduled to end at 5 o'clock, the first bus, I believe, is leaving at 5:30 for the barns. The bus won't leave at 5:30 if it's not full, but the buses will leave 5:30, et cetera, et cetera. But the last bus, I believe, is leaving at 6. Am I correct on that? I believe it's 6 o'clock. So get downstairs. If you're going to go upstairs to change, that's great, fine, but get on those buses. They're going to be, as soon as the bus is full, it's going to leave. The next bus will be there, et cetera. And then the first bus leaving from the barns to come back here, if you want to come back here and then go out to dinner, although there will be heavy hors d'oeuvres at the barns. If you want to do that, the first bus will leave at 7 from the barns to come back here, but again, it will not leave until it's full, and then we're going to have continual set of buses. It is possible to walk to the barns. It's about a 20-minute walk. It's going to be a beautiful evening, though, and certainly you can walk from the barns to restaurants in Center City or back here and go from here. So just a little bit of housekeeping there. So, thank you, everyone. I think that's all of the assignments that I've been given. So when you finish this workshop, get back here quickly. The next plenary is only an hour, but we have a very important announcement at the very beginning of it, and I don't think you're going to want to miss it. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.